Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a Year 2021. We are on day 226, and we are going to be reading Jeremiah 26, 27, 28, and 29 today. So starting off on verse 2 and 3 of chapter 26, even when the Lord says that he has set his face against them, he's still looking for any way that he can rescue them. And so he sends Jeremiah. The Lord proclaims, "Stand in the temple courtyard and speak to all the people of the towns of Judah who have come to the temple to worship. Tell them everything I command you. Leave nothing out. Perhaps they will listen, and each will turn from their evil ways. If they do, I will relent and not carry out the harm I have in mind for them, because of the wrong they have done." Please recognize Dad's heart. Recognize that he always hopes for the very best for us. He always hopes and plans for the good decisions that we make. Yeah. Then we look at the cost to Jeremiah's calling. He went, he said everything he needed to say to the people. And then we read this in verse 8 to 9. When Jeremiah finished saying everything the Lord told him to say, the priests and the prophets and all the people seized him and said, "You must die. Why do you prophesy in the Lord's name that this temple will become a ruin like Shiloh, and the city will be destroyed and left without inhabitant?" Then all the people joined ranks against Jeremiah in the Lord's temple. Could you imagine? You've been fighting for these people. You've been petitioning for them. The Lord gives you this opportunity to stand and give them good news if all they have to do is turn away from what they're doing, and then everybody gangs up on you and they want to kill you. Jeremiah, in turn, tells them this. He warns them in verse 15. "Only know for certain that if you sentence me to death, you and the people of the city will be guilty of killing an innocent man. The Lord has in fact sent me to speak everything I have said to you." And we know that there are special things that happen to people who take innocent blood. So this is a very important warning he gives them. And then we find out that there are actually some officials, some people who are on Jeremiah's side, if you can put it that way, that they want to protect him and make sure that no harm comes to him. And so we read this in verse 16. "Then the officials and all the people said to the priests and the prophets, 'This man doesn't deserve to die, for he has spoken to us in the name of the Lord our God.'" It's good to know. And then they actually present an argument for defending Jeremiah, and they remind them of the prophet that spoke during Hezekiah's day, and they say, "Did King Hezekiah or anyone else in Judah execute him? Didn't he instead fear the Lord and plead for his mercy? Then the Lord relented of the harm that he had pronounced against them. We're about to commit a huge mistake that will cost us our lives." It's pretty good to go back to the examples that are in history and present them. But we see that Jeremiah needed to be interceded for, because another prophet, Uriah, he didn't fare so well. He had the same message. He spoke it in the king's court, not in the temple, but in the king's court. He wasn't sent to the temple. He was sent to the king. And the king wanted him killed. And he ran. The prophet Uriah heard about it, and he ran to Egypt. And we pick it up from there. They brought Uriah back from Egypt to the king, who had him killed, and his body was thrown into the common burial ground. But Ahikam, Shaphan's son, protected Jeremiah and wouldn't let the people execute him. Wow. Imagine facing all that while you had to 20 years, 3 years, give a message that nobody was wanting to hear. And then Jeremiah has this message from the Lord for the people, and it's basically submit and live, people. Chapter 27, verse 5-7. By my great power and outstretched arm, I have made the earth and the people and animals that are on it. I can give it to anyone I please. Now I hand over all these countries to my servant, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Man, sometimes we may think our leaders are bad, but do you hear this? You know, people who want to throw leaders because they're bad. We have King Nebuchadnezzar, who is one of the most vicious men of history, leaders of history, who's taking down all these nations. And Yahweh is saying, he's my servant. Continuing, I even give him the wild animals as subjects. All nations will serve him, his son and grandson, until the time of his land arrives. Then many nations and great kings will conquer him. Wow. And the word from the Lord, just warning, like your leaders are lying to you. As for you, don't listen to your prophets, diviners, dreamers, mediums, or your sorcerers who say to you, don't serve the king of Babylon. They are lying to you, and their lies will lead to banishment from your land. I will drive you out, and you will perish. Very specific warnings that are being given. And so we get this message, verse 11, trust and live. By any nation that puts but any nation that puts its neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serves him, I will let stay in its land to till it and live on it, declares the Lord. Submit and live. Now, you got to try to understand how hard this is to accept. I mean, this is their land. It's been their land for generations upon generations upon generations. They fought for this land. They've conquered this land. They've cultivated this land. They've been blessed in this land. And now they're just supposed to surrender it. Verses 12-14. I delivered the same message to Judah's king Zedekiah. If you want to live, put your necks under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him and his people. Why should you and your people die by sword, famine, and disease, as the Lord pronounced against any nation that won't serve the king of Babylon? Pay no attention to the words of the prophets who encourage you not to serve the king of Babylon, for they are lying to you. And then he turns around, and it's not just to the king. He has a message to the priests and the people. Then I spoke to the priests and all of this people. This is what the Lord says. Don't listen to the words of the prophets who are prophesying to you. In a short while, the temple equipment will be brought back from Babylon, because Babylon has already conquered them, has come in, has taken the equipment. We're going to read about that in just a bit. So it continues, they are prophesying a lie to you. Don't listen to them. Serve the king of Babylon and live. Otherwise, the city will be reduced to ruin. So that is now the message that he has for them. The earlier messages have now transpired. And this is now the message that he gives to them. Just submit and live, submit and live. And then in chapter 28, we have this conflict between a false prophet and the true prophet. Verse 8 and 9, the prophets who came before you and me long ago prophesied war, disaster, and disease against many lands and great kingdoms. So the prophet who prophesies peace is recognized as one who is actually sent by the Lord only when that prophet's message is fulfilled. Wow. So he's telling them how to tell. This is Jeremiah, and he's telling them how to tell the difference between the true prophet and the false prophet. And then Jeremiah has a personal prophecy for the false prophet, Hananiah. Then the prophet Jeremiah said to the prophet Hananiah, listen, Hananiah, the Lord hasn't sent you. All you were doing is persuading these people to believe a lie. Therefore, the Lord proclaims, I'm going to send you somewhere, right off the face of the earth. Before the year ends, you will die, since you have incited rebellion against the Lord. The prophet Hananiah died in the 7th month of that year. So I think it's pretty clear for us who's the prophet and who's not. And then Jeremiah is given of the Lord to write a letter to the deportees that are in at Babylon. So this is part of the letter that he sends to them from the Lord. Build houses and settle down. Cultivate gardens and eat what they produce. Get married and have children. Then help your sons find wives and your daughters find husbands in order that they too may have children. Increase in number there so that you don't dwindle away. Promote the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because your future depends on its welfare. That is pretty strong stuff. So live where I have planted you. Live where I have planted you. The blessings aren't just reserved for the land of Israel. No, prosper where I have planted you and pray for that city, because if it prospers, you will prosper. And he gives them, lays out his plan for them. Verses 10 to 14. The Lord proclaims, when Babylon's 70 years are up, I will come and fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back to this place. I know the plans I have in mind for you, declares the Lord. They are plans for peace, not disaster, to give you a future filled with hope. When you call me and come and pray to me, I will listen to you. When you search for me, yes, search for me with all your heart, you will find me. I will be present for you, declares the Lord, and I will end your captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have scattered you, and I will bring you home after your long exile, declares the Lord. That's his heart, guys. That's his heart. That is his heart. Understand who Dad is. That's for those who have been deported. And then there's bad news for those who haven't. Verses 17 to 19. The Lord of heavenly forces proclaims, I'm going to send the sword, famine, and disease against them. I will make them like rotten figs that are too spoiled to eat. I will pursue them with the sword, famine, and disease, and I will make them an object of horror to all nations on earth, and an object of cursing, scorn, shock, and disgrace among all the countries where I have scattered them, because they wouldn't listen to my words, declares the Lord, which I sent them time and again through my servants the prophets. They wouldn't listen, declares the Lord. So all those who are thinking it's very unfair for the Lord to do what he's doing, understand here that he has given them ample time, plenty of warnings, generations of warnings. And this is the day that the judgment has arrived. And as a result of this letter, there's a conspiracy that is tried to be hatched here. So a letter comes to the priests, it's sent from the priests, from the a false prophet in Babylon. And they say, so why haven't you threatened Jeremiah of Anathoth, who pretends to be a prophet among you? He has sent a letter telling those of us in Babylon, you are going to be there a long time, so build houses, settle down, plant gardens, and eat what they produce. Yeah, so encouraging the priests to put Jeremiah to death. But the priests showed that letter to Jeremiah. So I don't know if they're friends, but the priests knew better. The priest has seen enough, heard enough, and brings it to the prophet. So the Lord gives declaration for Jeremiah to send back. Verses 31 to 32. Send word to all the exiles. The Lord proclaims concerning Shemaiah, the Nephalite, because Shemaiah prophesied to you when I didn't send him. And because he convinced you to believe a lie, I will punish Shemaliah, the Nephilim, and his descendants, declares the Lord. Not one member of this people will be around to see the good that I have in store for my people, declares the Lord, for he incited rebellion against me. So it's pretty clear. It's pretty sound. We see what the plan is: the 70 years, time out. Those who obeyed the Lord and submitted and were deported will live, and those who have rebelled and fought against him and will not live. And the false prophets will die. And yeah, so there you have it. A lot to take in, I know. So you guys be blessed today. Thanks for being part of this. You might need a nap after all of that. And we will catch up with each other tomorrow. God bless.